Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 143. And the title of this episode is Computer Malfunction Halts the Market, a Cyber Attack Would Decimate It. And we see a lot going on around the world. We have this Syria problem with the chemical weapons, where the U.S. is saying that the Syrian government used the chemical weapons on their own people. We have the NASDAQ that went down, and we're seeing other things happen around the world and the economy. And this Syria incident could be the start to World War III. But let's get right into the economic collapse news today, and we are going to look at retail and what is happening in the retail market, which gives us a nice picture of how people are actually spending their money. Do they have any money? Are they employed? Are they underemployed? And but we're seeing a lot of stores now coming in saying that their sales have dropped quite a bit. We're seeing it at Walmart, Costco, Barnes & Noble, Best Buy, Radio Shack, JCPenney's just a nightmare. And we are seeing many other stores saying this, and businesses. And HP has come in, and they're dashing the 2014 growth hopes. The company reported a 9% decline in their revenue, and they're saying it's unlikely that they'll see growth in 2014. And they're attributing this to poor sales. Abercrombie and Fitch, they are saying that their profit fell 33%. Aeropostale forecasts another loss, and Sears Holding is reporting a second quarter loss of $194 million. So what is going on here? If the unemployment rate is going down and the economy is doing better and housing is booming, why the problem? I mean, back in February, retail stores told us that they were closing hundreds of stores and laying off hundreds of retail employees. But the news tells us something very different. Now, they talk about unemployment in the U.S., and they're saying that unemployment, the applications for unemployment aid rose to 336,000, but they're seeing that things are getting better. Even though they're rising, this goes on to say that the drop in layoffs helps explain why job growth has increased this year. Or is it that the manipulated numbers make it easier for the percentage of unemployed go down? I'm going to go with that one, because we can tell by the information that we're receiving on retail, on housing, that things are not going well. Because when people are employed and they have money and they always know that money's coming in, people go out and they'll spend. But we're seeing the opposite. And this article goes on to say many economists foresee growth accelerating in the second half of the year to an annual rate of roughly 2.5%. They expect consumer spending to pick up as the effects of the tax increases and spending cuts diminish. And in the same time that all this is coming out, they also report that household income below end of recession amount. So this goes on to say that the average American household is earning less than when the Great Recession ended 4 years ago. U.S. median household income, once adjusted for inflation, has fallen 4.4%. And what this says is that nearly every group is worse off than 4 years ago. So let's put the pieces together. People have less income coming in, less saved, because they have these great full-time jobs? No, because these full-time jobs have turned into part-time jobs. These full-time jobs have turned into no job. So we have a vast majority of people who are working in the service sector field, who are underemployed, who don't have jobs at all, and this is why you see retail sales going down, housing starting to drop, mortgage applications starting to plunge, because nobody has work. And we're seeing a disconnect now between the government numbers and the Gallup poll numbers of employment. Now, the BLS is showing 7.4, but the Gallup poll numbers are showing 8.9% unemployment. And if we go back to 1994 and we use the calculation from that time instead of the manipulated one, we see that the real unemployment is 23%, and among youths, people coming out of college, it's around 45 to 50%. So that paints a picture of what's really going on. Now, I've said this in the past, and countries are definitely prepping for some type of war, which is World War III. Let's just come out and say it, because that's what's going to happen. And we see that countries are having continuous drills. They're changing their constitution, just like Japan is changing theirs to become, instead of a pacifist nation, to someone who can declare war and protect allies. The U.S. is rotating people out of the Philippines base out there to cover China. We have the U.S. circling now China with many bases, and this just came out today. A top U.S. Air Force official says that the U.S. is planning to station a military aircraft in India and to encircle China. And General Halbert Hawk Carlisle, the commander of the U.S. Air Force assets in the Pacific, had told reporters at a breakfast meeting recently that the American Air Force was planning to expand its presence in Asia as part of the Pivot to Asia policy. The idea behind it is to ring China with U.S. and allied forces. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, we're blaming them for cyber attacks on the country. They are hoarding. China's right now is hoarding and collecting gold. It looks like China is going to be the next reserve currency. And this general goes on to say that we're going to build many more bases in the Pacific to support the Air Force's increased presence there. The U.S. Air Force has 9 major bases in different countries. So they are getting ready for this. They know what's coming. All assets, all military assets are being moved around in preparation for this war. Japan has built the largest warship since World War II. We have India building aircraft carrier submarines. Iran is teaching their children about drone hunting. They're building a new fighter jet and new submarines. Russia is building a new radar system and putting their missiles in Armenia. And we see drills happening all over the place. And the Japanese is creating an equivalent U.S. Marine division in their armed forces. So when you take all that and you wrap it all together, what do you have? You have something's coming. And let's not even talk about the Middle East right now, because that's a whole nother story, which includes the entire war. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, U.S. promised Iraq weapons to be used against Iran, and they were going to supply terrorists in Iraq to use against Iran when the war broke out. And this goes on to say, when Iraq was occupied, the U.S. declared its intent to crush terrorists. But we have information that the former U.S. ambassador held a meeting with terrorists, said they were willing to supply weapons to militants under the condition that those weapons were pointed toward Iran. And these weapons to be used for fighting Iran when the U.S. government, Israel, France, England all invade Syria, and then of course move into Iran, because Iran has an agreement with Syria. If they go to war, Iran would be there to help them. Russia is also backing Iran and Syria, same as China. So you can see where the war is going to break out. And now what we're seeing is Russia and Syria invited the UN to come in and to inspect the area to show that they were not using chemical weapons. When the UN Security Council arrived, just so happens at the same time, there was a chemical weapon use that killed many people. And the US, France, England, Australia all came out and they're saying that yes, the Syrian government used chemical weapons on their own people. But then we have to go back. Why would they invite them in, then use chemical weapons on their own people? It makes no sense. More likely what happened was the paid mercenaries, which is paid by the U.S. government and the central bankers and CIA, that are pushing this war in Syria. They're the ones who did this, hoping to get everyone in the world saying, oh my God, this is terrible, we need to go to war. But what has happened since then is that back in January of this year, January 30th, 2013, there was a news article in Yahoo, and I have it on the x22report.com site. It is on this post. And just go to the title. It's on. You just go to the homepage and scroll down a little bit. Find, computer malfunction halts the market. That's the title. Click on it. It will open up the post, and you can scroll through it, and you can see this. I took a snapshot from my browser of the article in Yahoo, so we don't lose it. So, eventually what happens is they like to delete these things, and then we can never find it again. So I took a snapshot, and I put it on here. And what it says is the Obama administration gave the green signal to a chemical weapons attack plan in Syria that could be blamed on President Assad's regime, and in turn spur international military action in the devastated country. And this was from leaked documents. And again, what I just read to you was from January 30th, 2013, and it's on the site. And we can see that all the countries are pushing for this. I mean, Senator McCain is out there. We need intervention. We need to go in there. And we have to remember what General Dempsey said. This is going to cost $1 billion a month to do this. And to do what? To go into Syria, remove Assad, put a puppet government in there so the central bankers can have the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency so they can make more money. And then eventually they're going to go for the grand prize, which is Iran, where they can do the same thing and remove the government there, put it in a puppet government, and make the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. This is what it's all about. They're going to lock down the oil. All oil will be sold in U.S. dollars, and the central bankers will make more money. This is what it's about. Now, the Australian military are working with Washington, and they're going over the evidence, and they want to, go through everything because they're working out a plan to go into Syria. Now, we know already that the U.S. government has CENTCOM, which is in Amman, which is an underground base with about 270 officers positioned there to handle the strategy of invading Syria from that point. The base is protected and underground, so it's impervious to missiles and bombs and things like that. We also have 2 aircraft carriers sitting right outside there, plus another warship. There's 1,000 U.S. troops out there, plus paid mercenary troops which were trained by the U.S. government. And we can see that this is all starting to unfold now. And because of the alternative media and people pointing out all these things and calling it a false flag. I noticed that the Obama administration has come out and said we don't know for sure if Assad used these. We're going to have to look into it further. The UN Security Council is not allowed to go into the area where the chemical spill, the chemical weapons were used, and there's only one reason why they wouldn't be allowed. And I have to say that since Syria and Russia invited them in, there'd be no reason to say, hey, don't go in this area. This area is off limits because whoever did this is trying to clean up their mess before they get there. So it can't be blamed on the rebels, Israel, U.S. government, and any other agency that was involved or country that was involved in this. Okay, now let's move on. Now, we know for a fact that the debt in the U.S. is unsustainable. And when the debt gets so big, the U.S. government, the people of America cannot create enough revenue to support the interest on the debt. So the government has to go out and find additional revenue. And a lot of times, and we saw this during the revolution, they tax people, like Obamacare. They want to do the internet online tax. That's another tax they want to do. Or they go around seeking out additional revenue. So those people who do not live in the U.S., that live abroad but have a U.S. passport, and any income they make outside is considered now U.S. income, and it is taxed. And those people who put money into Swiss bank accounts, people who put money in the Cayman Islands, can no longer do this because the U.S. government is coming after them and they need additional revenue. And this is under the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, which allows the U.S. government to go after this money to bring in more revenue to try to support this unsustainable debt. But the problem is this debt is going up so fast, it's impossible to do. Now, whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg has come out and said that the U.S. government spying programs, DHS, TSA, all the laws, the NDAA, the Patriot Act, all these things, the U.S. is becoming a police state. And we know it is. The TSA is now ordering more ammunition. We know the IRS is being trained with assault weapons. DHS is a armed force outside of the military, and what we realize is that the military budget is being cut and DHS is receiving more and more money. They look like military, they drive military vehicles, but they're not part of the U.S. military. It's our own special brown shirts, SS, whatever you want to call them. That's what they're going to be used for. They are not set up for terrorists. If you go to their the DHS site, they have a terrorist alert system. There's never anything on there. The reason for it, you, those Americans who are listening to me, you are the terrorists. That's what they have been set up to keep you in control, to spy on you, to make sure you're not going to give them any trouble. And when the time comes, they know where to go, who's on what list, and they will come and collect you, and me, myself included. Now, we see that the cyber attacks that I've been reporting on are coming closer and closer together. More reports are coming out, and they're starting to blame it on the Syrian Electronic Army, Al-Qasim, and now they're also showing that Iran has the abilities. They've been preparing for this, and they are creating a cyber warriors to cyber attack the United States. And they list here that China and Russia and Iran have the ability to bring down the power grid, water supply, and actually hit the financial institution and bring that to a screeching halt. And we're seeing this today. The NASDAQ, what's being reported as I was doing this, they're saying it is a computer glitch and they had to halt the system completely. There was someone who said that they heard on Fox Business that it could have been a cyber attack. Do not know this for sure, but let's just say this is some type of computer glitch and they had to halt the market. If this was an actual cyber attack, which I read to everyone yesterday, which was episode 142, they would be able to completely decimate NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange to the point where the whole thing would just crumble to pieces, because they would be able to fake what is going on while everything was being siphoned off, being sold, things being done that no one would be aware of. And bringing this entire system down would completely collapse what we have right now. And from all the propaganda of the mainstream media, and we see it every day, unemployment is getting better. Housing market is booming. The second half of this year is going to be fantastic. But if we look around, retail stores right now, it's August. They're already starting to try to sell for Christmas. This is what they're trying to do because they know they can't make it. The sales are going to be horrible because what we know is that unemployment is just going to get worse. And it's just going to get worse as time goes on. And during the Christmas season, we're going to see stores close down and things not go well for them. Plus, the primary dealers have spoken, and what this means is that back on July 7th, the New York Fed, asked primary dealer superiors and asked them their thoughts on the taper and what they would do. And they came back with their answer. The taper is announced and begins September with the first reduction in monthly purchases of $15 billion. And they have a chart here that goes from the purchases in billions from September all the way down to 2014 of June, saying that's when QE will end. So they're saying from now until June that they're going to start to taper, and when we hit June, there'll be no more QE. Now, if we go back to episode 138, and if you want to find episode 138, go onto the x22report.com site. Just in the search, just type in episode 138. It'll bring you right to it. Remember what I said. The first part of the collapse is going to happen this fall or winter. Now, from this, what they're reporting, they're saying that QE is going to end June of 2014. I was saying spring, early summer, the major collapse will happen. Do I believe that they're actually going to taper this fall or winter? No. I believe that they're going to pretend to do it, and then an event will happen. What do I mean by this? Something will happen that will cause the first part of this collapse to occur. And this will bring the stock market down. The foreign investors that have, countries that have purchased treasury bonds will start to sell them off. And the government and the Fed will blame this on another country. We can see right now we are trying to get into war with Syria. I mean the U.S. government. When I say we, I live in the U.S. So the U.S. government to get into war with Syria. So they are trying everything they possibly can at this point to get this war started. So if they cannot, they will blame this on Syria or Iran or both. Makes no difference, because the blame will be shifted off of the Fed and the U.S. government. And at this point, when the market completely comes down, people will lose a lot of their wealth. The Fed will then turn around and they will increase QE because they need to, because the amount of treasury bonds that are being sold. If there's a seller of treasury bonds, there has to be a buyer. And right now, the Fed has purchased $2 trillion worth of treasury bonds. China has reduced it to 1 point something trillion, and they're going to reduce it even more. And so are the other countries, because they realize what's going on. As more bonds sell, the yields go up. So this is what we're seeing. So they are going to try to pretend and make it seem like they are saving us by increasing QE to 170 billion or 200 billion, whatever they want to use to say, this is what we're doing. And all these and US dollars will start floating back to the US, and inflation will start to kick in. The market will collapse. Banks will become insolvent because most of their money is in the equity market. They will have to declare bail-ins. And I've said this all in episode 138, but I thought it was very good to go over it again because of what has just come out. Now, there are a couple of false flags that are coming up and a lot of things that are going to happen during this fall. September 5th and 6th is the G20 summit, and there's some rumblings that at this G20 summit, the U.S. dollar, there might make some type of an announcement that the U.S. dollar is no longer the reserve currency. Don't know, we have to wait for this to happen, but this is things people are saying. And this happens on September 5th and September 6th. How interesting. September 11th, we have the Million Muslim March on D.C. Now, to counter this Million Muslim March, we also have the 2 million biker ride to D.C. to counter the planned Million Muslim March. And this has all the aspects of a false flag of something going wrong and something happening. We also have a drill during this period in November, a drill on the power grid simulating a cyber attack on the power grid and water systems. During this time, in September 11th, the FBI has also put out a private sector advisory that they anticipate a cyber attack on financial institutions. So we do have a lot going on here. We also have September 30th, which is the end of the budget for supplying weapons to Syria, and they would have to go back to Congress and and make their case to budget this in again, and that ends September 30th. We also have the debt ceiling issue coming up, where Congress will either have to say, no, we're not raising the debt ceiling, or yes, we are. And this is another issue that is coming up. So we have many things that are happening during this fall and early winter. And it's just very interesting at this point in time that the NASDAQ they had to halt it, and this was the only day that the New York Stock Exchange finished in the green after 6 days in the red. Listen, everyone, thank you very much for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.